We're now going to move on to talk about what my voice recognition has picked up as the Kolkata Knight Riders. It's, of course, the Kolkata Knight Riders. And look, every year I pick KKR as one of my teams to preview, mainly down to the fact that once I was lucky enough to play a club season with Andre Russell. So I'm going to hang on to that as my reason for, I guess, backing them every single year despite their results. 7th last year for the competition. And I guess why I think they can win it, and I'm kind of going to go on their batting. I think Nitesh Rana, Rinku Singh, Rahmanullah Gurbaz. And then I think one of the keys for me, and it probably comes onto that kind of X factor conversation, is they've picked up a really good replacement for Jason Roy, I think, in Phil Salt, because he gives you an option. He's in form for England. He's, a couple of hundreds in the West Indies for England, and he's probably last but one white ball assignment, but also can wear the gloves as well. And then, we'll talk about probably permutations, but I think KS Bharat's probably the other option with the gloves. Point to prove. He's just been dropped, obviously, from the Indian Test match side. I really, really want to see Mitchell Starc on the park throughout the course of the tournament. I know there's been a lot of sort of workload management, particularly from the England and Australia boards in terms of their fast bowlers. So I really hope we see a lot of Mitchell Starc in this IPL. And then they've got some really, really good experience from some of these West Indian guys, the likes of Russell, the likes of Narine, the likes of Rutherford as well. And then they've got a really good option in not only Rinku Singh, but Shreyas Iyer as well with the bat. So I think that those are the reasons why, I think that they're gonna go well. But yeah, happy to be talked down on any of those points.
Well, can I pick up on the Russell and Narine? How long can these guys keep going? Because when I look at this side, I just think, like, are they automatic picks? Every single game, are they, like you talked about Salt and Gurbaz before? Potentially those two guys. It feels like if Narine and Russell are locked in, then those guys are fighting for one spot probably, because Starc is already locked in, and these guys, like, it's been a while obviously since they've really contributed on an international level. They go around and do the T20 circuit. Are they gradually, I haven't actually checked the numbers, are they gradually becoming less and less important for their franchise sides?
Look, I've certainly not checked the numbers, and Baldy's got, probably the answer as to whether they squeeze into the lineup. My short answer is I think Russell plays when he's fit, because I think he offers you an opportunity with the bat, an opportunity with the ball, and he's a gun fielder as well. Narine, I think, might come in and out of the side, so I don't necessarily think he's a lock, particularly depending on what they do with Phil Salt if they play him ahead of Bharat. But Baldy, I don't know what you think.
I didn't have Narine in my first choice 11. I didn't even have Shafane Rutherford in my first choice 11 as well. I think those are the guys who will rotate in for someone like Mujeeb, depending on how much he plays. I think Stark's a lock. I actually think Phil Salt is a lock because I think he's in great form at the moment. And I think they need some punch at the top of the order. I think they'll pick him ahead of Gurbaz, even though Gurbaz has had a pretty good last 12 to 18 months. So
with Bharat?
I didn't have Bharat in my first choice 11. I had Phil Salt because he's so damaging at the top of the order. Then I had sort of Rana, Iyer, Rinku, Pandey, Russell, Venkatesh Iyer, then sort of Starc, Sayakaria, Mujeeb and CV Varun. So I had a pretty heavy spin attack, but with backup from Starc and Sakaria.
And just to answer your question directly on Russell in particular, I think he's someone you don't look at the numbers. You know what he can do. Similar to what Karen Pollard's done with Mumbai when he was there. They can just win games for you. And if they win one game, that's great. If they win 3 games, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
he has the ability to do that.
If I gave you the line of Andre Russell's going to win 2.5 games by himself in this IPL, or near enough, like man of the match worthy performances, do you go under or over?
Yeah.
I'd go under. And I actually think, maybe this transitions to it.
You won't be welcome in the bar at my old club, that's for sure.
Well, because I actually think that the real match winner in their side and the guy that I'm super excited for is Rinku. I mean, he's got so much to play for, I think, in this IPL. We've seen the last couple of seasons how much he's been able to add and how many kind of huge moments that he's had in this tournament. He's got a T20 World Cup spot to nail down, and this tournament's going to be massive for picking that, and great opportunity for him.
Not to be a negative Nelly, but our side's going to be able to work him out eventually. Like, as he got some regression, because he's been amazing the last season or 2 or whatever. Certainly it feels like teams haven't worked out how to combat him yet. My only concern looking at that KKR lineup is that if teams can combat Rinku Singh, then that there's a winnable game there for you if you can do that.
Yeah. Look, I think they've got a bit, and I've written this down as why I think they might struggle. Is I think their batting lineup that particularly with some of those guys that like Rinku, like Dre Russ coming in. To an extent, even like a Shreyas Iyer, they need to catch a really, really good run of form. And if you've not got 2 or 3 of those guys going really well, we've talked already about a couple of teams where you're kind of looking at that top 3, top 4. We looked at Delhi Capitals and we're talking about Prithvi Shaw, we're talking about David Warner, we're talking about Mitchell Marsh. They're stacked at the top. These guys have really got to get their middle order firing. So I think that probably is a little bit of a question mark as to whether they can get them to fire consistently. And that's the risk with someone like Rinku Singh who doesn't catch the cards, and has to keep folding, or is made to fold, I guess.
So speaking of risks, so we're about 60% through this this team here, KKR, and we haven't spoken about the $3 million man once. What about Mitchell Starc? Oh, I mean, it's in terms of being an impact player, we haven't mentioned him at all.
Yeah, look, I said at the top, I hope we see him play a lot in the tournament. So I think he is almost the first name on that team sheet, considering the money they've paid for him as well. I think that they went out, they really wanted to make sure that they secured him. So look, I think him and Mujeeb, I think, are there as the overseas bowlers. Look, I think he can light up this IPL. You talked about Mark Wood and what a guy with extreme pace can do. I think as well, not to underrate his batting as well in that sort of 7, 8, 9. He'll like those Indian grounds because when he hits it, he doesn't plink it, does he? So look, I think he's going to have. I think he's going to have a really, really big impact as long as he can obviously stay fit and the ACB or whatever they're called now, Cricket Australia, have let him bowl some overs, which I'm sure they will.
What are you expecting from Starc, Raj? Like, what is his floor? What is his ceiling in this tournament?
Oh, I think he's got a very big ceiling, but I also think he has a very low floor as well. I think there's a lot of expectation on him that he's just going to be a plug and play sort of element of this lineup, but we have seen him go through periods of his career where he's struggled. Yeah. And this is a 6 week, is it still 6 weeks?
It's about 8 weeks.
8.5 weeks.
This is an 8 week tournament. It's very easy to not be able to deliver in that period of time.
Well,
a lot of pressure.
And they're going to rely a lot on him, I think, in the seam bowling attack because, you mentioned him before. You mentioned like the other guys, I think, in their bowling attack, it's really spin. We've got Mujeeb if he plays. We've got Chakravarthy. And Suyash Sharma played last year. I'd loved watching him bowl. Yeah. So I think they've got a bit of spin depth, but seam bowling depth looks quite weak. And if you don't have those overs up front, Chakravarthy maybe can bowl some overs up front. But anyway, I think that if Starc, like you said, I hope he plays. I think if he doesn't play, if they kind of resting him or that kind of thing gets in the mix, then I think they're going to really struggle with their seamers.
Well, and I think that is where they ultimately will potentially struggle. Chakravarthy 20 wickets last year. Dre Russ, I think 7 wickets. You talked about Sharma, but they had a couple of overseas seamers, and I'll say it very, very quietly because it's a New Zealand-based podcast. But Tim Southey and Lockie Ferguson really didn't have a lot of impact. They only played 5 games between them, but I think what we're going to need to see is obviously Mitch Starc play a number of games, Dre Russ to be fit so that they can go to those, to those spin options throughout the course.
Does Gus Atkinson make your side?
He's withdrawn from the tournament.
Yeah, he's out. Unfortunately, he would have been a really good guy to have.
He's been replaced by Chamira from Sri Lanka.
So they lose a little bit with when they don't have Gus Atkinson because he would have been the guy that bolstered that seam attack potentially for them, right?
Minute to go, Binksy. How are they going to give us your prediction on how they will fare in this tournament?
Yeah, so look, I think from a betting perspective, the bookmakers don't give them much chance. They've got them right down the bottom of the table, paying 12 to 1. From a ladder perspective, finished 7th last year. I'm going to let the heart rule the head, and I'm going to say that they're going to scrape into the top 4.
Top 10.
I think they're going to scope into the top 4. But for listeners, that is that really is a heart from head kind of prediction. Look, I think they'll be in a pretty similar place on the ladder, but they do have a couple of more than a couple of match winners. So, I think you write them off at your peril. But yeah, I think their social media game might be a little bit stronger than where they finish on the ladder. That wraps up our preview of the KKR.